Okay, welcome back to the Freestyle Trick Tip, where every week on this channel we break down some sort of a trick related to freestyle skateboarding. If you're not familiar, it looks a little bit like this. Now today we're setting up a little bit differently because I want to talk about something a little different than the usual fare. How to choose your first freestyle skateboard. Something that a lot of people ask me about and something that we really need to make a new video to break down and cover and give you all of the details for. Now freestyle skateboarding is a pretty diverse and strange thing, right? You've got guys doing all different kinds of tricks and all different kinds of approaches with their skating, and it's good to have a board that suits what you're trying to do. So I'm gonna try to break down as quickly as possible exactly what to ride, what to check out, and what to think about when you're picking up a board. Now, most people who first get into freestyle are familiar with guys like Rodney Mullen, Per Wellender, Kevin Harris, Pierre Andre, Don Brown, all of the OG, old school freestylers. Now, a lot of those guys are gonna be riding stuff like this. This is a reissue from Paulo Peralta. This is actually a Rodney Mullen from his 1986 shape. Anyway, it's an old school board by all standards. It's got very simple concave, just a kick tail on it. It's a popsicle. It's a tiny little thing. And for the time it was made, it was pretty perfect for freestyle. Back in the 80s, these guys were riding really small boards. There wasn't a whole lot of technology put into them yet. And for the kinds of technical flips they were doing and stationary tricks they were mostly doing, these worked. Now, these aren't bad boards by any means, but I often make the analogy that these are sort of like the Model T Fords of skateboards. You can ride them, but at the end of the day, you're not going to enter a race in one of these. You're not going to try to compete or skate at a high level on one of these, unless you're sticking to just doing kind of simple, old school stationary flip tricks and not rolling a bunch. This would be good. But a lot of us, myself included, are doing a bit more. We need something more. I would suggest going with something a little bit more tech if you're getting into freestyle for the first time. So the complete old school route may be for you, maybe it's not. Now I want to talk about the total other side of the spectrum, that being street skateboards. Like this. This is actually a really old board that my roommate has. Rounded at both ends, sort of the usual shape that you would see in most skate shops around the country, around the world. These can be pretty good for a lot of things. A lot of the freestylers at the end of the 80s were riding stuff that looked a bit like this, and then we started doing street tricks with them. Slightly longer wheelbase, which is good for rolling tricks, and a lot more concave and kick than the traditional freestyle boards from the 80s. That can be really good for a lot of people, depending on what kind of tricks you're doing. If you're doing a lot of flat ground pop tricks, if you're doing a lot of rolling stuff where you need a stable platform, these can be really helpful. However, because they're usually bigger boards, that can be a lot to work with. And if you're trying to do a lot of quick flicks, a lot of flipping the board around technically, and a lot of stationary tricks, having such a big board can be kind of hindering to your tricks. So again, know what you're going out to achieve, know what you're trying to accomplish with your board, and try to think about that when you're picking a setup. If you're just getting into freestyle, but you're trying to do other stuff too, like, skate parks, skate street, do whatever, you might want to have a board like this that's more well-rounded for those things. But if you want to really focus in on freestyle, it might be worth checking out something different. Again, moving on. So this is the part where I really get to show off the stuff that I work on a lot. I don't know if you guys know about Waltz Skateboarding. Yeah, me and Daniel Trujillo run a company called Waltz Skateboarding. It basically is just our way of being able to tell our story and share freestyle the way that we think it's done best. We're a little biased. These are the boards that I make, and this is why I think they're really great. But I'm also going to tell you why I think they're great, so my bias is, also backed by science. If that makes it any better. We're gonna play a little game called What's in the Box.
What's in the box?
Not until you give me the
What's in
gun.
the fucking box?
All right, here we have two different graphics from Walt's Skateboarding that come in two different shapes. If you want to get either of these in either size, they're available in 7.5 and 7.75 inches wide. So you can get this one in 7.5 or 7.75 and this one as well. This, the Fuel. Now, when we were designing this board, we really wanted to make a board that was a cross between a contemporary, modern skateboard, sort of the street boards that you see around everywhere, and a old school, but still functional freestyle board. For the longest time, I rode single kickboards that were sort of on the edge of being an old school board. And we wanted to be able to make something that was useful for the more old school traditional freestyle tricks, stuff like Caspers, Primos, Pogos. But we also wanted to make a board that was functional for rolling faster, doing ollie flip tricks, and feeling like you're not only controlling the board, but riding something. And I think we found a really good size, shape, and mold to do that with. Now, like I said, these come in 7.5 and 7.75. This shape here that I'm holding is the 7.75 shape, and this is my personal favorite. Now, all the boards with this shape are going to have a 6-inch nose, a 6.25-inch tail for better scooping, better popping, and just a better platform to stand on. A 13.5-inch wheelbase, something a little bit longer than the average contemporary freestyle board, but still really snappy and really easy to throw around. Now, you may have noticed that it has sort of a rounded nose. Something that I really struggled with when I started riding double-kicked freestyle boards is that oftentimes they had really triangular tapered noses. And when you land on that nose, you start to feel like your foot's gonna roll off the edge and you're gonna roll your ankle. Not happening. I'm not gonna ride a board like that. I'm not gonna make a board like that for somebody else. And that's why we landed on this shape. It's got a blunt, round nose that allows you to feel confident landing on it or just manipulating it, whether you're doing footwork, shove-its, M80s, whatever. Oh, and you want to know about the tail? This is a totally different shape than the nose. We wanted to do a unidirectional, very uniquely shaped nose and tail, and this here is kind of a little bit wider and has a little bit less taper. Now, if any of you guys at home rode my Fortune model from the last company I rode for, this tail is actually really similar to it. It's just a little bit wider. Now, I like wide paddle-shaped tails when I'm doing freestyle. Something that you feel like you can really stick your foot to when you're doing impossibles. If you're doing tray flips or any kind of rolling trick, it really feels like it sticks to your foot and it's a lot to work with. However, you still have the taper in the rail starting right at the truck bolt, which allows you to rock on the side of the board when you're in primos and allows you to do rail flips much easier than if it just had no taper and was just straight into a rounded tail. A lot of boards have that, and I'm not a huge fan of it. So that's a 7.75 shape from Walt's. We're gonna move on to the 7.5 now, which is Daniel's favorite. The 7.5-inch shape from Walt's Skateboarding is a little bit like the 7.75 in that it has that lovely square blunted tail that we talked about. However, it is a 1/4 of an inch narrower. Now again, we're talking about a unidirectional shape. That is where the nose and tail have different shapes and aren't exactly the same. I like the idea of having a nose and tail that can do different things for me, and although I have to think more about which direction my board is facing, it allows me to do different tricks and shape my skating differently. Now this board is really special because just like that 7.75 shape, you have a more tapered nose. This is a 6-inch nose with that taper starting just behind the front two bolts, which allows you to kind of rock over the nose when you're doing rail flips and tricks like that. That rocking action you have when you're in rail stands allows you to get a better flip and an easier flip out of the nose. And the tail, which is also 6 inches long, has a similar taper, however it's slightly less so that you can still remain stable and have a nice square, full-sized tail under you when you're doing rolling tricks. Just like the other shape we talked about, the 7.5-inch from Walt's has a 13.5-inch wheelbase, so a little bit longer to make your rolling tricks more comfy, but not too long to hinder you when you're doing your stationary stuff, your footwork, all the fun stuff that you would usually be doing on a more traditional standard freestyle board. And if that's not already amazing, check out that concave. We were super fortunate when setting up these boards and when making them to have access to this amazing concave, which we're calling the flat earth concave. Now this super mellow concave gives you the most contact between your shoe and your grip tape that you can possibly have with a freestyle board while still maintaining the rigidity and the snappiness and responsiveness of a street skateboard. And we think it's the perfect happy medium. In addition to the rail-to-rail concave, you also have this beautiful mellow kick on the nose and tail of the board. Now these kicks are exactly identical, even though the shape of the nose and tail are not identical. Can I balance this on my head? And these mellow kicks allow you to sit in your Caspers, in your truck stands, in your pogos comfortably. And if you have any experience with a super steep, super big street board, you'll know that it's a lot harder when you have super extreme kicks on the nose and tail. We like to keep it mellow, keep it easy for you to slap your feet on and stick your feet to when you're doing Caspers, truck stands, etc. So like I said, both the Fuel and the Pilot come in the 7.5 and 7.75 shapes. You can get either at waltzskateboarding.com, Never Enough Skateboards. Use what we have to pick the board that's right for you. I obviously love Waltz skateboarding. It's become my life, and I'm so proud of what we're able to make, Daniel and I, with Waltz. But knowing what you need is what's important, and finding the board that fits your skating best is what matters here. Go out, learn something, have fun, and keep dancing. We'll see you next week for another episode of Fake Trick News. Bye.